A new rotation of Stygian just started, and in this video I will cover all the new boss mechanics, teams, stacks and strategies we can use. As per usual, there are weird things we can do to make this one easier. I will focus on difficulty 5 and 6, Fearless and Dire, with as many examples as I can, but keep in mind that I can't cover every single unit and scenario by myself. For difficulty 4, the enemies have slightly different mechanics and behavior, but you can always co-op by directly inviting someone to your world. And before covering the first boss, I want to show you guys a project I've been interested in for a while. This game is Arcadium Space Odyssey, and it's so fun. You basically fly around space, wipe out crazy waves of aliens, and literally harvest planets to heal and get stronger. It's easy to control, but if you want to survive later levels, it actually gets really hard and you need to play well and build right. Each run is about 12 minutes and they are all very different and ramp up really fast. And the craziest thing is that this is made by a solo indie dev, which honestly makes it even more impressive. I've known about this project for a very long time and you guys should really check it out. It's coming out the 26th of January, but you can already wishlist it right now on Steam. Link is in the description. Back to Stygian. The first boss is a totally new one, the Lord of the Hidden Depths, which I will kindly refer to as Dog. Let's see what it does. First off, it has the new highest HP we have ever encountered in Stygian so far, slightly more tanky than the recent plunge boss. However, HP is not the full picture because of the boss mechanics. As soon as this one spawns, it will disappear and create a new kind of shield. This is equal to 45% of its HP, which is massive, but any lunar reaction damage is literally multiplied by 3. Not just that, the first time this shield takes any form of lunar damage, then 36 energy is going to be given to you. Now be aware that this is in the form of clear particles, so if there is a character you want to prioritize this on, they should be the one catching them. Additionally, this is not exactly a classic shield and weapons like Favonius or Sacrificial do work. And then, for some reason, in this phase, the boss is immune to physical damage. Thank you Hoyo for keeping Eola in check, I guess. When the shield is destroyed, the boss loses 20% of its HP and has a phase lasting about 15 seconds where all its resistance are decreased to minus 60%. This is obviously the reason for its very high HP. We are trading the shield phase damage for 20% plus a phase in which we deal substantially more damage. The shield is incredibly tough, but not for lunar characters. Failing to destroy it is a big waste of time, but technically you can tank the hit coming right after, although I doubt this is going to be very useful to most. As you might have noticed, that's not all, because there is another way to deal with the shield. Once it's up, the boss will summon 4 anglers, which I will kindly refer to as chickens. And these have 18% of the boss' original HP, and once defeated, the main shield drops by 25% each. Meaning we have two main ways to think about this fight. Either go for the main body, having to deal a total of 45% of the boss HP, but with our lunar reactions being incredibly stronger, or we go for the chickens, and we only have to deal 18% of the boss HP, but we have to defeat 4 of them. These, at a baseline, are all the rules of this encounter. A shield phase, a stun phase, the main fight, and then after 1 minute from the stun, everything all over again. Now, let's get the obvious out of the way first. If you have lunar damage, your main strategy will be to focus on the dog directly, and the overall fight is really simple. The chickens have less HP, yes, but they are not weaker to lunar reactions. A tip that can help you here is the fact that no matter what you do once the shield is over, the boss will always take the same exact damage. Then start a low resistance phase. This means that you should prepare your team to deal the most damage exactly when this phase starts, so that you can get the most out of it. An example for Flints is setting up without bursts, and then after on-fielding for a bit, setting up every buff so that by the time the boss is down, we can go for our real rotation. Remember that Stygian is about builds, investment, skill, but also about routing. Not matching your damage with a stun phase is a bigger damage loss than most other things. So, Flints, Nefer, Binefa all have a pretty easy time here. If you have both the on-banner characters, you can literally do it with just that and Sucrose. You don't even need a 4th member. With lunar teams, you honestly don't need a guide to help you. But let's say you have 0 lunar damage. What do? And that's what the chickens are for. You see, the boss having a shield worth almost half of its HP means that you're not getting rid of it in the small window of 28 seconds that it gives you. 18% of its HP in that amount of time, however, is still a DPS of over 80,000 in Fearless, which doesn't even sound that high, but when you factor in that you only have 10 seconds to prepare from 0 energy and it's all AoE, it's a different story. I've had premium teams fail in this phase just because they didn't have enough time to set up. So I believe that this is not going to be achievable by most players or teams, but technically doable. The good part is that you can group the chickens very easily, with Kazuha, Sucrus and Venti for example. And the even better part is that they hardly get staggered by your attacks, with very few exceptions. However, they do like to walk backwards a bit, which is not very nice. And before you ask, yes, of course I tested Fall damage, and it works. But it doesn't feel as good as other cheesy strats we had in the past Stygians. It seems like the chickens can be lifted but not staggered during the fight, and it takes a lot of effort for Jin to even get full damage once. However, as soon as they spawn, they can be staggered, which means that someone like Kazuha can get some pretty nice nuke out on all of them. The best I could get was a hit of 500,000 in Fearless. This is what I managed to find by myself, but I'm sure the community will cook even more. And that's pretty much it. This boss is a Lunar check or a high AoE DPS check. If you have Lunar, you're good, but if you don't, I just don't feel really good at recommending much here. Your best bets are Mavuika or Orlikino with Kazuha, or a very well positioned Skirk actually able to burst all 4 chickens without any help. But I just don't think this is going to be easy for most. Moving on the second boss, we have the Shock Trooper, the first rerun we have ever seen in Stygian. And partially because of that, it's going to be the easiest boss for many of you. Quick recap on the mechanics. At the start of the fight, the boss gains 3 layers of shield. These have high resistance to all elements except Electro, and take increased damage from Electro, Electro Charged and Lunar Charged. The shield constantly regenerates, unless you trigger Electro Charged or Lunar Charged, which slows the healing. Vaporize and Melt do not work on this kind of shield. When destroyed, he will lose 6% of his health from each and you get a bunch of energy. So the reasons why I say it's gonna be the easiest for most is because it gives you free energy, you have more damage from Electro and its hydro reactions, a stun phase with dropped resistance, and we had an entire month to face off this encounter already, so there are a ton of strategies that we know of. For example, with time we learned that you can completely stagger this enemy and make the shield never come up. I tested this, and as of recording this video, it still works. This is definitely harder and not for everyone, but enables Jin teams, Arlecchino, Mavic and such to not have to deal with the shield at all. We have also seen Skirk and Varesa clear this encounter even in dire stages. Most commonly, this encounter will either be for the teams that include the Electro or Lunar Charged reactions, or have enough damage to basically not care about it. Once again, the 2 on-banner characters deal with this so easily that I think this 3, again without a 4th member, might even defeat the dire version of this boss. Lastly, a small note I have is that Yahuda's skill does not work on this boss while under a shield, just in case you wanted to try that. And for the last boss, we have the Emperor of Fire and Iron. Of course, joining us with some changes, making it very similar to the Bloom Crab we faced not long ago. So first off, this is the least tanky encounter of this rotation. It packs a very common 10% resistance to every element except Pyro. The main mechanic is its horns. These are worth 64 units of Pyro, which is 4 times the overworld version. Plus, they also increase every resistance by 150%, making it basically undefeatable. This is how much of any element you need to apply to destroy them, but the thing is, the horns are hard to reach for most characters and additionally, although very slowly, constantly regenerate. The strategy here is not facing it directly, but instead fighting the constant spawns of smaller crabs which also have a shield. This one is worth only 12 units of Pyro and when depleted hits the main body, making the horns lose the same amount of elemental units. For them, this is how much of each element we need to apply. For example, 6 units of Hydro will get rid of it. Now, I say that this boss is similar to the Bloom Crab because the small ones also damage the main body. The hit is equal to 60% of Hydro damage taken plus 10% of others. I have tried to use multiple debuffs and buffs on the main body before this damage hits, but it doesn't seem to work like the Bloom version of this encounter. There might be something here still, but I think it's just true damage and we can't really do much about it. In short, you are going for the small crabs and they will take part of the hydro damage that you deal and deliver it to the main boss for you. So now, why not focus on the main body and having the crabs just as collateral damage? You would just need to apply as much Hydra as possible, and then, with the resistances down, anything could work, right? Well, surprise surprise, the stun phase of this boss is only 10 seconds, and the shield is fully up right after this. 10 seconds is technically enough for many teams to deliver most of their damage, however, that's just one rotation, and right after you have to yet again deal with about 5 or 6 small crabs that also don't get summoned altogether, or straight up, 64 units of Pyro. So what's the real strategy here? We need to defeat as many crabs as possible, while dealing as much Hydra damage as possible. Technically, we don't need super fast depleting the shields, because that gives you time to deal more damage, and it all has to be AoE. Now, look at who's on the second banner of this patch, has a new skin, and the answer will be very clear. Novilette will have the time of his life here, because on top of covering everything I just pointed out, he also gets free vaporizes. Meaning, even in a team with 2 Hydra units, he is able to get 3 Draconic stacks, which is huge for him. So, in a team with Furina for example, that's like having his C1 for free. Another character that really likes this is Mualani. We have free vaporizes, faster attacks if the crabs are close enough, and technically with the Anemo units you can get very creative. Since all the small crabs always have Pyro on them, that means we don't need a character just to do that. And since the ground will also have Pyro, that means characters like Kazuha or Sucrose can absorb it in their bursts, so even when the boss is stunned, we can still vaporize. This is going to be a very useful and common tech for the more expert players. Now you might think that bringing Anemo units is not very good here, since everything is under Pyro, and that's true but not completely. This boss, even its overworld counterpart, actually has 2 different hitboxes. One for the crab and one for the horns. And the main one is not constantly under Pyro. You can apply any element to it and trigger reactions normally. Since most Anemo characters prioritize Pyro over Hydro when both are present, that means we can still swirl Hydro and then absorb Pyro. For Anemo units, if not used carefully, this can be detrimental since they will damage the small crabs with rather small swirl hits. But this also means that we can still get effects like Vivi, Kazuha, Shilonen, Sucrose, Cinder City and many others. Again, it's harder to use, but a possibility. Technically, there are also Anemo characters with a different elemental priority, like Lynette or Anemo Traveler, that could even absorb Hydro, but again, that's at the cost of the damage the crabs will do. This double hitbox the boss has can also be used by Mualani, since her AoE talent is actually activated by it. A few more niche notes I have to share is that if you don't get close, it will always start with the same 2 attacks, and there is an opening I discovered while testing that is very easy to replicate and might be useful. Simply wait for the jump attack, the first attack is not going to hit you, then dash backwards to dodge the second attack, and all 3 crabs will be summoned in a very convenient line and quite close to each other. Getting close as soon as the fight starts instead has a chance of skipping the second attack, and summoning the crabs even faster, although not very close to each other. Also, they allow fairly easy plunge attacks, do with that information what you will, and if you have a mouse that enables very high DPI, plus Novilette, congratulations on that. Lastly, I think that out of all 3 bosses, this one has the most potential of weird strategies. And I tried to share what I discovered, but the fact that this fight is still about dealing damage and not just about destroying shields makes it less likely that we can totally cheese it. After looking at Novilette and Mualani, maybe some Skirk double Hydra team or even Skirk with Novilette, it becomes a bit hard to give good team recommendations. Looking at the Hydra roster, surely characters like Zinshu and Yelan do well for the shields, but again, the faster you defeat them, the less damage they will likely do. Then we have characters like Tartaya, who applies a ton of Hydra and has a decent nuke on the burst. Mona for her increased damage can be a useful support and even sort of a DPS, then Candice actually does manage pretty well helping a team. It's gonna be harder with these characters, but they can totally help. Lunar Charged and Electro Charged teams also have a chance since Electro is the second best element to deal with the crabs, and then of course Colombina, especially with her huge burst AoE, is pretty strong, but chances are she is needed somewhere else. So to recap, the first boss is likely going to be either easy for Lunar teams or a huge AoE DPS check for non-Lunar teams. The second boss is going to likely be the easiest for most, as it's possible to even ignore its mechanics with enough damage, and the last is a big Hydra check, plain and simple. I will keep you updated with any strategy that I find. As always, this is just me sharing my experience and testing. Hopefully I was complete enough to give you an understanding of the encounters, but we will see many new strategies pop out once the entire community gets to contribute as well. Thank you so much for watching, remember to check Arcadium Space Odyssey in the description, like and sub if you want, and see you next time.